On the 2nd of August, a set of rules became enforceable across the European Union. Not the famous ones, those got postponed. These are the quiet ones, and they apply to almost everybody. If your AI talks to a customer, the customer has to be told they're talking to a machine. If it generates content, that content has to carry a marking another machine can read. The exposure is up to 15 million euros, or 3% of worldwide turnover, whichever is larger. It applies to you if your output reaches the European Union, whether or not your company is in it. So legal is going to come and ask whether you comply. And here's the thing, almost nobody is ready for. That isn't the first question they'll ask. The first question is, what do we have? Most organizations cannot answer it, not badly, but at all. That's what this episode is about, and the fix is smaller and more boring than you'd expect. Same company as always. You run support at a mid-sized software firm, 40 people, a few thousand tickets a month, and an assistant that answers customer questions out of your help center. You know that system exists. You approved it. You can name the vendor and roughly what it costs. The problem is the other 11. Let's do the regulation quickly because it's the part of this episode most likely to be wrong by the time you need it, and the least important part of the answer. 3 things are true as this is recorded. First, the transparency rules are live. Disclosure when a person is interacting with AI, marking and detection when AI generates audio, image, video, or text. Notification when emotion recognition or biometric categorization is in play. The Commission published guidelines in July, and there's a voluntary code of practice you can sign which buys you a friendlier enforcement posture rather than immunity. Systems already on the market get until the 2nd of December to add the machine-readable marking. Anything new doesn't get that grace. Second, the big one moved. The heavy obligations for high-risk systems, the documentation, the conformity assessments, the whole apparatus everyone was dreading were due the same day. They've been deferred to December of next year for standalone systems and to 2028 for AI built into products that were already regulated. That's real relief, and it's worth naming what it isn't. 16 months is about one procurement cycle. If you buy a system now on a 3-year contract, it's still in production when the deadline lands, and you'll be retrofitting documentation onto something already running rather than specifying it up front. The deferral moved the deadline, it didn't move the decision. Third, the number everyone quotes is the wrong number. You'll hear 7% of global turnover. That tier exists, but it's for the prohibited practices, the things the regulation bans outright. Almost nothing a normal enterprise does lands there. The tier you're actually exposed to is 3%. And if you're a small or mid-sized business, the fine is the lower of the 2 figures, not the higher. I'm being precise about this in both directions because the scary number is doing a lot of work in a lot of vendor decks right now. Quoting it to get budget works exactly once. When someone in the room knows the tiers, you've spent your credibility on a footnote. And then there's the United States, where the map keeps redrawing itself. The first broad state AI law was passed, repealed, and replaced with a narrower one before the original ever took effect. Federal preemption has been pursued by executive order and contested in court. Different states, different definitions, different dates, and a live fight about who gets to set them. Which brings us to the conclusion of this section, and it's the reason the rest of the episode looks the way it does. We see you cannot build governance against a regulation. The regulation moves faster than your build cycle. Anything you construct to satisfy a specific article will be aimed at the wrong article within a year. What you can build against is your own systems, because every framework, the European one, the NIST one, whichever one your auditor walks in with, opens by asking the same 3 things in different vocabulary. What do you have? Who owns it? Can you show your work? So here's the question that starts all of it. How many AI systems does your organization have in production? Not how many projects, how many systems touching real data, producing real output today. Whatever number came to mind is low. That's not a guess about you. It's structural. One security vendor measuring this across enterprise network traffic put the average at about 15 generative AI applications per organization and estimated that more than half of that adoption was unsanctioned. Here's why. You approved the support assistant, so it's on your list, yet meanwhile marketing has a copy tool on somebody's card. Finance has a plugin inside the spreadsheet. Sales has note-taking software that records and summarizes customer calls. And somewhere in HR, resumes are being ranked by a feature that arrived in an upgrade of software you'd already licensed for years. That last category is the one that gets people, and it's the largest. A great deal of the AI in your organization was never bought as AI. It arrived as a checkbox in a renewal. Nobody signed anything. Nobody submitted a business case, and there was no approval for anyone to root. The obligations don't care how it got there. If you're operating it under your own authority, you're the deployer, and the disclosure duty is yours, not your vendor's. So, the first artifact of governance isn't a policy. Policies are the thing everybody reaches for, because a policy can be written in an afternoon by one person who doesn't have to talk to anyone. It's a list, 1 row per system and 6 columns. What it does, who owns it, what data it can reach, what it decides without a human, how wrong it's allowed to be, and who gets called when it fails. Building that list the first time is unpleasant, and it takes about 3 weeks of asking around rather than 3 months of consulting. You will find things. Everyone finds things. The finding is the point. But watch what changes the moment the list exists. Every future regulatory question becomes a filter on a spreadsheet you already have, instead of a discovery project with a deadline attached. Which systems talk to customers? Filter. Which ones touch personal data? Filter. That's a morning's work instead of a quarter's. None of this is new, incidentally. Security solved this exact problem 2 decades ago and gave it a boring name. Asset inventory. You can't defend what you haven't enumerated. It turned out to be the unglamorous prerequisite for everything else, and this is the same shape of problem wearing newer clothes. Second question, and it's the one the episode is named after. Who owns it? Not the AI committee. Committees are excellent at approving things and structurally incapable of being accountable for them because a committee can't be called at 11 at night. 6 things need a name written against them. A person with a job title who knows this is theirs. 1. The inventory. Somebody keeps the register current, new system to new row, within a week of it going live. Without this, the list is accurate once, on the day it's built, and decorative thereafter. 2. The content. Somebody owns what each system reads from, and whether it's still true. We spent a whole question in an earlier episode, and it hasn't got easier since. 3. The access. Somebody owns who can see what, enforced per user at the moment of the question. This one already has its own episode. 4. The threshold. Somebody decides how wrong each system is allowed to be, written down before launch, and owns the decision to switch it off when it crosses that line. 5. The record. Somebody owns the log of what was asked, what came back, which documents it came from, and what the system did about it. 6. The incident. Somebody gets the call, named and reachable, holding the authority to turn the thing off. 2 things about that frame. First, 1 name per row. Not 2, not a team, not a function. Shared accountability is a phrase that has never once survived contact with an actual incident. Second, look at rows 4 and 6. The threshold and the incident, those are the 2 that get skipped, and they're the 2 that decide whether a bad week is an incident or a lawsuit. Rows 1, 2, 3, and 5 are hygiene, 4 and 6 are the breaks. And row 6 needs one specific power attached to it, or the name is decorative. Authority to stop the system without convening anybody. If switching off the assistant requires 3 approvals and a meeting, it stays on through the weekend, answering customers, being wrong at machine speed, which brings us to the third question. Can you show your work? Governance isn't the policy document, it's the evidence. The policy is what you intended. The log is what happened, and only one of those is admissible. Here's the practical version of that. 6 months from now, somebody asks why the assistant told a customer something wrong on a Tuesday in March. Can you reconstruct it? what was asked, which documents the answer was drawn from, what version those documents were on that day, and who had signed off on the error threshold it was running at. If you can reconstruct that, you have an incident, unpleasant, survivable, closable. If you can't, you have a liability. And the entire difference between the two is record keeping you either did or didn't do at the time, months before you knew you'd need it. There's one more thing the log gives you, and it's the piece most people miss. A system that measured a 4% error rate at launch does not stay at 4%. The documents underneath it change, the questions coming in change, and the vendor updates the model beneath you, sometimes without telling you, sometimes without knowing it matters to you. So measurement isn't a launch gate, it's a subscription. The same 100 questions, the same graders every quarter, plotted on a line. The absolute number matters less than the direction of the line. And you cannot see a direction from a single point, which is what a launch test is. Assume you're building that monitoring yourself. Organizations running these systems seriously have mostly ended up building their own drift and accuracy monitoring because it isn't in what they bought. Ask before you sign whether ongoing monitoring is included or whether it's a project you're about to inherit. It is almost always a project you're about to inherit. So step back and look at what governance actually turned out to be. A list of what you have, 6 names against 6 responsibilities, a log that lets you reconstruct a decision, and a measurement you repeat on a schedule. That's it. No lawyer required to start. Nothing on that list needs a budget line, a vendor, or a steering group. And all of it gets more expensive every month you don't do it, because the cost was never the governance. The cost is the archaeology. A few episodes back, we looked at 5 questions to ask before you approve an AI project. Those get asked once at the start, when everyone's paying attention. This is who keeps answering them in the second year, after the people who built it have moved on and the person who approved it has changed jobs. And there's a version of this worth saying plainly, because it's what usually happens. Most organizations will build this after their first incident rather than before it. And what they build looks almost exactly like that frame. They arrive at the same 6 rows because there aren't any others. The one thing they all wish they'd done sooner is the log. You can write a policy tomorrow morning. You cannot write last quarter's log. And if you only chase one of those 6 rows this week, make it row 3. There's already a full episode on it, why pointing an AI at your file store quietly hands everyone in the building a key to everything in it, and what enforcing permissions properly actually looks like. Next time, a different 6. The 6 shapes almost every AI system takes and which one you're being sold. If this was useful, subscribe. See you then.